Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today I'm talking with Diana Harmon Asher. Diana is the middle grade author of Sidetracked and Upstaged, and she's here today to talk about her newest release, FINDS EVie Leftkowitz, a big-hearted novel about surviving the uncertainties of middle school, sticking up for what you believe in, and becoming the person you were meant to be. I loved it. I loved the lovable cast of characters, and I can't wait to talk to her about it. So we're going to get right to the episode. Diana, welcome to KidLit Love. I am so glad you're here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I am too. We talked a little bit before we pressed record, but I first found you and your books through Sidetracked, which was a very personal and meaningful book for both me and my son. So I'm going to make sure that you sneak in a little mention of that book before we talk about your newest. But before we get to either of that, I would love to start with you and your story. And I would love for you to give us the scoop of how you arrived in the children's literature world.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Sidetracked was my first published novel, and I had been writing and writing and writing and getting rejected, rejected. Um, Early on, I worked in publishing for a little while, and I worked for Columbia Pictures for a while as a story editor, which was really fun, except that no one listened to me. My job was to read manuscripts and make suggestions like this would make a great TV series, this would make a great movie. And I was in New York, and the bosses were in LA, and so I never really accomplished that much, but it was lots of fun. When I had a family, I really wanted to be home. I didn't want to be going into the office every day. And I always wanted to write. And while I was home, I would, sneak those hours and do some writing. And I did a lot of workshops. I lived near Sarah Lawrence College, and they have a wonderful writing program. And I just gravitated towards children's literature. I think part of it is maybe I don't quite have a grasp of being an adult. But I had such vivid memories of my own childhood and watching my kids grow up and being involved in the school. I was always watching sort of the social dynamics, and so I wrote, and none of them quite were right for publishers until I wrote Sidetracked, and somehow I guess I got it right. And that was my first published book in 2017, when my friends were retiring and I was starting a career. So it all worked out.
See, I both love and hate hearing stories like that, because the hate part is how hard I hear that the
Yeah.
journey to becoming a published author can be. But
Yeah.
then the wonderful part is hearing that every single person who sits here on this podcast with me didn't
Mhm.
give up. And it
Yeah.
happened, some faster than others, but it sounds like, it was a journey that maybe came later for you, but that was meant to be, right? You had Sidetracked, then we have Upstaged, and now you're talking about your third novel today. So
Yeah.
thank
And
goodness
I
you
mean,
didn't give up.
the secret is that this book actually was something I started way back when,
Oh,
and went back to. So, I think part of it, when I tell people, you have to you can't give up,
yeah.
believe in yourself and keep going. But also, the other part of it is sometimes you have to put something away and move ahead and start something new. Because there are people who kind of get stuck on the one book, and they keep rewriting and rewriting, and sometimes you just have to accept that it's not right now, and move ahead, and so that's what I did. And then I went back to this book, which was very, very different from how, once I reread it, I realized a whole different direction it could go. And I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
Hope it did.
Yes. Oh, it did. I loved it. I called it in the opener a big-hearted novel for a reason. I loved it. But I
Thank
also
you.
love that it's been on a journey too. It was something
Yeah.
earlier, and I think you really talk about not just a book lesson, but a life lesson, which is sometimes you have to put something aside and
Yeah.
move forward and see what's next. And then
Yeah.
maybe it comes back differently. And it just shows that the story, it was meant to be here, just
Yeah.
perhaps in a different way at a different,
That's a great point. Yeah.
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 So I would love for you to just give readers, listeners, a glimpse into Sidetracked before we jump into your
Sure.
newest book today, because it just meant so much to me, and I want them to know about Sidetracked. It's already featured on my website in my book list
Oh.
for kids, but tell us a little bit about Sidetracked before we talk about your newest novel today.
Well, sidetracked. The main character Joseph, it is the inspiration was my son Bobby, who was apparently a terrible athlete as a kid. I mean, everything confused him: soccer, basketball. All of a sudden everyone would be heading the other direction, and he would be like, "What?" Um, there's one part in Sidetrack when Joseph's grandpa is he's recollecting a basketball practice when he was young. Joseph is, and someone has to take him aside and say, you know, defense is great, but you only play defense against the other team, not against your own players. And that was the kind of confusion that Bobby had. And then he joined the track team
Yeah.
in seventh grade, and it gave him a team, and it gave him, and you say run, and he was terrible, but he's an adult. He has two little boys, and every day he pushes them in the double stroller for about 5 miles. He's run, I think, 30 some odd marathons. It it was the focus that he needed. And I just thought, I mean, Joseph is not Bobby, but I just wanted to create a character who he has ADD. He just feels like he's not good at anything. And he finds a friend in Heather, who's everything that he's not. She's a great athlete. She's a great student. She's confident. She's big and strong. And I just wanted to sort of get inside the head of a kid who's struggling like that, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, and a lot of it comes from team and striving for a personal record, just doing your best, doing better than you did the last time. Um, and and still, I always wanted to write with humor. Is really important to me. I didn't want it to be this sort of grinding story. There's a lot of fun in it.
Yeah.
And there's Grandpa's character, who's always kind of, brings in a few chuckles. Um, so that's where that came from. And I just felt like it all kind of came together in a way. And I found an agent who said, "I can sell this." I went, "Yeah, right, sure." Yeah, and she did. And I found a wonderful editor at Abrams who just kind of connected with it. And once you work with an editor, it just gets better and better. That's a real treat when you finally do get published.
Yes.
Um, so that's kind of where Sidetrack came from.
Yeah, I'm so glad we just took a couple of minutes for that, because as I mentioned, it it really was an important book for me and my son, who I, was on the book hunt, trying to search for a book to help him going through a particular point in his life. And the funny thing now is that he has always been a basketball and a football kid and thought, okay, college is football, football, football. And then senior year, suddenly he's on the track team and he
Wow.
fell in love with it. It's this combination of team sport, but also just pushing yourself to be
Yeah.
your best, which is a really neat combination. And I'm going to have to remind him. I'll have to remind him and
Yeah.
see if he remembers the book now and the fact that he has
Yeah.
switched to that very sport.
It's a very pure sport.
Mhm.
I mean, cross country and track. It's just yeah, like you said, it's a combination of team and you're in charge of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great sport,
Yeah. So,
underappreciated.
yes. So let's talk about the newest book though. Let's talk about it. I would love for you to tell us about the book in your own words. I always love hearing the quick pitch from the author without a spoiler, of course.
Right.
But tell us about your newest so we can talk about it today.
It's almost really hard for me to do this, the sort of elevator pitch. Um, but it's about a girl who's lost her father, and her mother is starting to date, which is something that happened to me, and I sort of remember just it was just horrible watching her go on dates. And in Evie's case, her mother's going on a date with the assistant principal at her middle school, which just adds another,
Ever.
just like another level of ick to the whole thing. Um, the other thing her mother has done is she's volunteered Evie to tutor a boy who was her best friend in nursery school, and they played through kindergarten, and then they went to different elementary schools. So she hasn't talked to this kid since kindergarten. Now they're in seventh grade, and he's kind of cool, and his best friend, together they're just kind of those, oh, he's trouble. That's where the part of the trouble comes from. So she's facing these two things. She has some kind of quirky friends, and it's kind of how her friends and his friend, how they, what their labels are, how they kind of come to understand that the labels aren't their whole selves, and how she navigates through her relationship with her mother, her relationship with Joey, who's the kid she's tutoring, and it also involves some praying mantises and a kind of after school heist that happens.
A
Um,
heist is the best.
yeah, it's kind of fun, and what spurs it.
Yeah. Well, that was a beautiful elevator pitch. I don't know what you were waiting. One of the things I love about the book that I mentioned to you before we press record is that there are so many different entry points into the book for readers that no matter what reader you are, I feel like every middle grade reader, and quite frankly, even every adult reader, because I also found my place inside of this novel, there's something for everyone. Whether it is connected to someone who has perhaps lost a parent, it could be someone connected to maybe parents got divorced instead of a loss and someone is starting to date. Every middle grade reader can relate to friendships and changing friendships, perhaps a little bit of bullying, a little bit of troublemaking, a little bit of trying things that maybe you shouldn't. There are so many different places for readers to just settle in here. And I wanted to give you a chance to just talk about those characters. They're this cast, as you said, quirky characters are just so lovable, even when they're doing things that maybe aren't so lovable, because you give us the inside glimpse into all of them, which is a feat. In a middle grade novel, it's not, yes, we're learning about Evie, but we're getting the transformation of the other characters because of this fellowship, and we can talk about that word later, that comes to be in the book. And so I'd just love for you to talk about that for a second.
Well, Evie is a lot like me, and I drew on a lot of my experience. But the other characters, I guess I just well, her best friend Rachel is Japanese American. Um, and I've recently been to Japan a couple of times because, oddly enough, Sidetracked and Upstaged were selected to be part of a Japanese. They have every year they have a national essay contest, and they choose 3 or 4 middle grade books, and kids are encouraged to read these books and write an essay. And then there's a whole national contest and a ceremony, which just blew my mind, that first of all that they would be translated into Japanese, and then that they would be honored to be chosen. So I got to travel to Japan and
That's
meet the
amazing.
translator. It was just incredible, and I'm still friends with, I mean, the translator and the editor. The editor doesn't even speak much English, and somehow we looked at each other, and it was one of those like friendships that just we have the same sense of humor. And
Wow.
um, so I wove that in, because I haven't seen a lot of Japanese American characters. And so Rachel kind of took on, I mean, Evie is trying to explain her being Jewish American to these boys, Joey and Tommy, and there's kind of a lack of understanding at the beginning of the novel that I think they all grow in their understanding. And Rachel, it's the same thing. Like they think she's going to come to the school dance wearing a kimono, except Tommy doesn't even know the right name for it. I think he calls it a sayonara.
Yes.
Um, so there's that identity thing going on with those characters. Then Spencer is kind of this, like
I
he's
love
the
Spencer.
kid. Yeah, he's the kid who, I think I said in the book, if he had a target on his back, you just know he's the one that the bullies are going to zero in
Mhm.
on. And he kind of becomes a hero, and he very much becomes a hero in his own way. And then Joey and Tommy have been labeled as, the kids who are trouble, the kids who are slacking off. And they, I think Evie comes to understand that label, that sometimes it's a self-fulfilling
Mhm.
label, that once you've given up on a kid, well, what choice do they have? And so I think she's part of their coming to understand that they don't, that there's a lot more to them, and then they have value too. And um so yeah, so they all sort of go on their own journeys, and they do it with each other's help. I think it's all part of, a weaving together of these kids, and have they come together in a strange way and then realize they have a lot in common.
Yes. That was what I loved. They were each on their own individual journeys, but
Mhm.
they couldn't have arrived where they were at the end of the book without each other
Yeah,
being on
yeah,
their own individual journeys. And I would say having an openness to learning from and with each other. I
yeah.
really loved how Evie and Rachel, they stood their ground and stood up for themselves. Whether one had to do it because she tumbled out of a closet or one just did it because she was going to do it, they 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 said something. But they did it in a way to let people know. And the boys on the receiving end received it. So it was just this beautiful individual growth, collective growth, the
Oh,
the
thank
stuff that you
you.
hope happens, right? In middle
Well,
grade and adulthood, I would say.
yeah. Well, part of that also was that a lot of what they did came from ignorance rather than hatred, or, you know real desire to hurt. And there's some other peripheral characters who also just don't understand, like the one girl who says, oh, my mom always puts out matzah for Yom Kippur. And it's like, no, Yom Kippur you fast, you don't eat, and matzah is Passover. And it's not that she's evil, it's just an ignorance about Judaism, about, and with what's going on in the world today, I feel like if it's just like a little tiny parable of, like, talk to each other and inform each other, and instead of just saying I hate you, you hate me. um I felt like that entered into it too.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that as well, because there is a part of the book where when there is some misunderstanding, when there is some back and forth, it was said, well, I'm just not going to talk to them anymore. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you can't do that. That is the only way that we can
Right.
help people feel something different. And that kind of comes along to the idea of fellowship, which is a really cool part of the book. And maybe if you're a middle schooler right now, you wouldn't think this part is so cool, where they get paired up at lunch with certain groups of kids to really come together and to tell their stories and to be seen in a different way. And I would love for you to just talk a little bit about that fellowship. That's where Mr. Mitchell, or Mitchell, which just
Yeah.
made me smile,
Mitchell.
comes
Yeah.
into play. Yeah, but tell us about that fellowship piece. It was beautiful.
Well, I call it the community Canterbury, because I mean I've just always loved the Canterbury Tales. And there's my freshman year, I was lucky enough to have Bart Giamatti as my freshman teacher. He became the president of Yale, and then he was the commissioner of baseball. And he was just a brilliant, wonderful man. I mean, I still think about him. And one of the things we read was Canterbury Tales, and that that theme of fellowship in that book. So Mr. Mitchell kind of brings us up and says, gee, we're in Canterbury. And he brings up that idea of fellow travelers, and they each have their own story, um, coming together in fellowship. Um, Actually, just a funny story about Bart Giamatti. He loved baseball, and he used to talk about baseball in this very philosophical way about going away and coming home. That, when you're on second base, you're out there, you're alone, and the whole idea is coming home. Um, and I just thought that was so brilliant. Just that baseball can have this poetic going out, traveling, exploring, and coming home, that it's all about coming home. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, I just really, as a fellow or a former educator of little people, like I loved that idea. I've attempted to have those lunchtime conversations
Yeah.
myself. And I feel like, as I mentioned, it's a book for middle grade readers, but it's a book for adults. It's a book for
Yeah.
adults to remember just how to be and how to be open and how to say and how to listen and all of the things. And I also want to mention, because I know there are a lot of librarians and educators who listen, I feel like this should be required reading in every teacher education program, because there are, as you mentioned, there are some so-called troublemakers, right, who are kind of living up to the labels that they hear about themselves, that
Mhm.
teachers, when they think no one is listening, are saying. And it went right to my teacher heart of everyone just needs to remember words matter, and the ways that
Yeah.
we talk about people matter, and the stories that we don't no matter even more. Like, we need to figure them out. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Oh,
Lucky
thank
enough,
you.
I am a teacher educator, so my
Yeah.
students will hear about this book as we talk about it, because we often read a lot of books together that help us think out of the role that we're in, right? Out of
Hmm.
the own shoes that we're in, and what would that do, and how would that child act? And so I
Yeah.
just feel like there's so much for so many in this book.
Oh, thank you.
You've really done it. You've really packed in a lot that we could think about and talk about. I also want to bring up one other thing that I loved seeing in the book. And I'm probably not going to say it correctly. So I'm not. And I'm going to let you say the word, but it is that practice of when something is broken, of taking that sticky tree sap and the gold dust and putting it back together.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if I can pronounce it correctly either, but it's just in Japan, it's an idea that when a bowl breaks and you put it back together, instead of trying to hide the cracks, you highlight them. And that just kind of fit with there's something broken at the end of the book without doing spoilers,
Yeah.
and how you can, and I sort of related it to a broken heart. It's never going to be the same. You're always going to be carrying. I mean, a lot of the book does, or Evie's loss of her father is a major theme. Without, I mean, I hope without dragging it down. I mean, but um, she's I mean, I can speak from experience. Having lost my father, I was 14. Evie is younger when her father dies, but it's always there. It's always going to be there. But you can carry on, and you can carry it with you, and the wounds are part of your life and part of your personality, and you can't just, instead of burying them, you can kind of cherish it in
Yeah.
a way.
Yeah. It was such a beautiful message.
Oh, thank
You
you.
you tell me how you pronounce it though.
You're putting, I'm not even sure.
Listeners, Google it. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'd have to go look it
Concept.
up again, because I don't want to get it. I don't want to get it wrong.
Yes, it was just such a beautiful metaphor for I felt the way things just came together with the group and the
Yeah,
way
yeah,
that they built their friendships and then rebuilt and also rebuilt families and themselves. I just loved it. It was like the
oh,
icing
thank
on the
you.
cake of a way to really conceptualize what readers could walk away with from themselves. Right? I mean, because that's what books do. They give us a story to get into, to be seen, to learn from, and every book has the potential to just change us, how we
Yeah,
see ourselves, how we see other people, and your book definitely has those possibilities everywhere. Even in the parts that we haven't mentioned because we don't want to have spoilers like
yeah.
this one we just said. It's a beautiful book. Thank you for
Oh,
reading it and not
oh, thank
stopping.
you. That means so much to me. It's fun when you write. I mean, I think I mentioned before. A lot of publishers said no to this book, and I don't. They'll you get these rejections like, oh, it was so wonderful in the character. I just didn't fall in love with it. And you just want to tear your hair out. Like, you don't have to fall in love with it, just publish it.
Right.
Work with me on it.
Yeah. Someone else, another reader will fall in love with it. Right. Yes.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
or
They
if
did.
there's something that's wrong, that's what editors do. So it's very frustrating, and you can't help but let it kind of seep into your consciousness, like, well, maybe it's just not that good, and
Yeah.
so that it means a lot to me
Good.
to hear you say that.
Good.
It's
Because it's
because,
that good. I'll just say it. It's
oh,
that good.
thank you.
And they're going to feel it. They're going to feel this book for sure.
Let's try to make things. There's a lot of humor in it too. I mean, there's like, I really had fun with. There's this one scene where Mr. Mitchell is, I guess, kind of a health nut, and so her mother is trying to introduce these healthier foods into their, so she sits down to dinner, and there's this slab of salmon and broccoli, and her reaction to that is, I mean, it's, she says it's sort of a metaphor for how she's feeling about this whole thing with Mr. Mitchell, that it kind of makes you gag. And um I try to make it sort of tactile and relatable,
Yeah.
in those little ways,
Yeah.
or when they're trapped inside a stinky lost and found. I hope kids will enjoy reading it as well as, like, taking lessons
Yeah.
from
Oh,
it.
they will. They will. And that's the beauty. When they fall into the story, the lessons just feel seamless. And that's the best part.
Yeah, I try really hard not to make it lessony.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, I read a lot of middle grade stuff, and sometimes it's like you get to it, like, oh, here comes the lesson. And I think there are a lot of books that adults praise, thinking that kids are going, that they're good for kids, but that kids don't necessarily enjoy reading.
Yeah.
So I try to make it something
Yeah.
that they'll enjoy.
Yeah, they will.
Oh,
Now,
thanks.
tell me about what might be next. Where are you working on anything else, whether it's a planned project or not? I'd just love to know about what you might be
Yeah,
writing.
I've been over the years. I've been asked a lot about writing a sequel to Sidetracked, and I kept saying, no, I ended it where I wanted it to end. But then I started thinking maybe, and so I'm working on that, taking the characters to the next season of of track and field. I'm giving Joseph the Coach T wants him to try hurdles, which I figure has got to produce some laughs. Um, but so I'm working on that. I don't know, if and I don't want to just do the same thing again. So I've sort of added something else to it, a project that he's working on with a couple of other kids that I hope will kind of enrich it, because I don't want to just write the same thing, because
Right.
when you have a character and you've left him at a different place, you can't go back and rewrite the same struggles because he's already kind of come a ways. So I'm trying, and I hope it'll come out well.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear that. Having read and loved that book, I am excited to hear that.
Yeah.
So where is the best place, excuse me, for listeners to find you online so they can just learn more about you, find that backlist, keep up with what might come in the future? Where are all the places?
Sure. I have a website, dianaharmonasher.com. That I lump everything I'm proud of on there.
So
Um,
lovely. It's
so
visually beautiful too.
oh, thank you. I have a website designer who just does a lovely job each time, and she's just great. Because at first I tried to do it myself. I was like, no, this is not my
Hard.
expertise. Um, and then I'm on uh, Facebook and Instagram. Um, if you just, I don't even know the they can find it.
Okay, yes.
Um,
And
and
I'll
I,
find
I,
it and
I
put it in
don't
the show notes.
I don't do a ton of stuff on social media, but I'm there, and like I told you, whenever I see that someone like you has said something nice about a book, I always try to reach out and say thank you, because it's what keeps us going, really, is to know that there are kids and teachers and adults and librarians who are enjoying the books and recommending them. And school visits, I get very nervous about school visits, I have to admit. So I'm always a little reluctant. But when I do them, it's just incredible. And so, or Zoom visits. Sometimes I'll just have like a Q&A with a bunch of kids on Zoom, and that's just terrific, to actually to talk to kids and see how the book affected them. And every now and then you get a great question, like that. There was this one group of it was a special ed class, and this one little boy had had hair all over the place. He was just a mess, and he we were about to end, and he just waved his hand. He said, "No, I have a question." And the teacher said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "How do you get your hair to be so neat?" I said, "That's the best question I've ever gotten. Thank you."
Oh,
So
this is why I love working with kids.
yeah, yeah, they're just great. And it does give you hope when you meet with these kids and you're hearing all about how they're on their phone all the time and they don't read, and kids are reading, and they're really thinking deeply, and I don't know, maybe they can do better than we've done.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for coming on today. I'll make sure to put links to your books in the show notes and links to your website as well as your social media handles
Aw,
to make
thank
it
you.
really easy and clickable. But I loved the book. I loved chatting with you today about it. And I'm just so grateful to be part of your launch of putting your
Aw.
newest into the world.
Thank you so much. It just means so much to me, and this has just been a pleasure. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you loved what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.